Good morning. Welcome to Colored Roses and Thorns, Smart and Messy Red Brick Drip, LLC. You know, sometimes with your spine injuries, when you have a spine injury, you just don't know how long you're going to last. And I'm getting out all of my truths in everything because you just never know what might happen. Um, when a narcissist focuses in when you're their obsession and you are their obsession and they're trying to destroy you, they will fabricate all sorts of stories to make sure that you're not getting attention. They want to make sure that people see you in a bad light, or they don't like you getting attention, so they will do certain things to distort reality and to change what's real into something false. And there are a lot of narcissistic parents, narcissistic mothers, in my case. And I have no reason to lie about this. And I've told my story many, many times how I would get jobs and she would go to my boss and tell them untruths because she didn't want me to have certain things. She didn't, long as you have less than what they have, they're okay. But if you get into a position whereas you're getting too much attention or she thinks that you're going to surpass her, it becomes an issue. And it's like an all-out war to destroy you and your image and keep people from loving you. Well, that's what they think, that it will stop people from loving you or have different perceptions of who you are. In this particular case, when I got a job, mind you, I paid my own college education because she told my dad not to pay my education because I gotten pregnant in my junior year, which wasn't a problem because the truth, it wasn't the first college or university that I'd been accepted to. But to jump forward, this is something that happened 30 years ago, and she kept using it over the years to try to mar my name. First, she went to my boss. I was working as a protective investigator. Started the job, I think they started me out at $60,000 a year. Back then, that was a heck of a lot of money. And I was able to get a sports car, brand new, cash, no used car. I was able to afford it. And I knew the day that I drove over to my office and she stood out because her office, mind you, she was director of this organization, and the protective investigative office was right across. It's like an office complex. And I knew the minute I drove in my new car, and I could feel, you can feel when somebody's looking at you with envy or hatred. You could feel it. And I could feel things like that from my own mother. I thought, oh, she finna stir something up. So she went over, I don't know when she did it, but she went and she told my boss that I had stabbed somebody, y'all. Stabbed somebody. Mind you, about 8 years prior to that, I was pregnant with my daughter, 6 months pregnant. And there was a man that I was married to before my long term husband. And I was 6 months pregnant. And the man that I was married to, I quickly found out that he was on crack. And I don't know if he was having an episode or what, but he took a knife and he said, I'm going to cut. I don't know what he called my baby, but he said that he was going to cut her out of my stomach. He had me up against a wall with a knife to my face. And I was not going to let him cut my child out of my womb. So we started fighting. We started tussling. I was actually grabbing the blade, y'all. I had cuts in my hand from grabbing the blades, trying to stop him from like stabbing me. And then he was slinging the knife as though to cut my stomach. So the fight went on with me fighting him and me grabbing the blades and my hands getting cut. And I pushed him backwards over a table. The table flattened because we just had like this kind of like a card table that could fold up, but he fell over it and he rolled. And then he jumped up and we got into a physical fight where I ended up on the ground and I was kicking him. And he was coming down with the blade. I grabbed it and it broke. So I started like swinging, still the pointed part towards me and the little square part that it broke off in it. I'm just swinging, but he grabbed my arm, so I never hit him with the knife. We started rolling. By then, he had taken the blade back, and we were like rolling, and he ended up on top of me. And that day, he had on like yellow sweatpants. And I looked down and I saw like red on his yellow sweatpants. I say, oh my gosh. I say, you're bleeding. And then he looked down and it was like he went into shock. And he drops the knife and he runs out the door. So I guess when he got to the hospital or whoever took him, I don't know how he got there. He was in such shock that he was bleeding. And when they asked him what had happened, he said his wife stabbed him. That's the lie he told. So because he said that somebody had stabbed him, they took him in for an exploratory surgery. Meantime, back at the place, I called a friend of mine, my daughter, my first daughter's dad, who was on the police department. I say, he tried to kill me. I say, he's tried to kill me. I say, please send somebody to help me. Those were my words. So in the meantime, while he was at the hospital telling a lie, and they were rushing him to surgery because if he wouldn't have told the lie, they wouldn't have done the exploratory surgery in the first place. It was only, I think it was a graze or something. I don't know what it was. But he ended up, and they did exploratory surgery to make sure that any vital organs were damaged. Only if he had told the truth, he would not have had that exploratory surgery. So, he was there, that was going on. I was still there, laid out on the floor, out of breath. Everything had been knocked over in the apartment. I got cuts in my hands from trying to grab the blade away from him. So the police comes in because of what he had said. They pulled me, they came because the door was still open. When he ran out, he left the door open, wide open. So they came in and pulled me up off the floor because of what he had said, put me in handcuffs. I said, wait, my hands are hurting. I even told them, I'm like, my hands are hurting from grabbing the blade. They didn't want to hear anything I had to say. So they took me down to like the county. It wasn't a county jail, it was a city jail. This was in a whole different state then. And I sat there, and then this lady attorney, I don't know if my ex had gone to get her or what, but she came, she looked at the evidence and everything, and I was 6 months pregnant. Oh, mind you, when he knocked me down, he kicked me in my stomach too. They didn't even check my baby to make sure that she was okay. So I'm sitting there, and she's looking at my hands and the marks from me grabbing the blade. They put me in a holding cell away from the other inmates, and they had done that because I had been a deputy prior, and they didn't want me in with the regular population because I had been in law enforcement. Even when I was down there where my mother was, I was a protective investigator. And then when I was in another state, I was a deputy, had been a deputy. So I'm sitting there in this cell wondering, Lord, what's going to happen? Because in me, for some reason, I was still worried about him because to this point, I didn't know at first what exactly he had told them. All I know, they came to get me. And so it wasn't until 2 days later, I think it was a weekend, and then on a Monday or something, I found out what they were trying to charge me with. They tried to charge me with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon or something. And I'm like, what? This was just like so overwhelming to me. I said, I didn't stab him. I'm like, he tried to kill me, which was the truth. So they said, well, if he dies, you're going to go to prison. I say die, but I'm like, from what I saw on his pants, it was just like a little nick, and it was just like a little tiny blood. It wasn't a whole bunch of blood. It was just a little blood on his pants. And I then found out that he had gone in for exploratory surgery, and he was in hospital, and I don't know. But even then, I was let out on bond because I wasn't a risk. I'd never been in any kind of trouble. So the first thing in my mind was to go check on him. That's how my mind worked. He was my husband, and I'm still carrying his baby. I need to go check on him to make sure he's okay. Not understanding the whole thing that was going on or what I had told. And then when I got to the hospital, his ex-wife was there. Mind you, his ex-wife, for some reason, think that we knew each other before they were divorced. But God knows, I didn't know that man until after his divorce. We didn't meet until after his divorce. I didn't know anything about his wife. I didn't know anything about him having children. Later on, she seduced him and got pregnant for him while we were married. Just crazy stuff. She pushed up a lot of that stuff, I believe. But anyway, when I went to the hospital, she was in the room. And I'm like, why is his ex-wife who divorced him in the room? She divorced him. So he told me. It could have been lie. I don't know. So she can't come in here. She can't come in here. That's what his ex-wife was saying. She's the one who did this. I was like, what? And then he looks over. He said, let her in. Let her in. He demanded that they let me in to see him. And I'm like, what's going on? What happened? Are you okay, first of all? But I don't understand why they're saying that I did this, this, and that. And so the next thing I know, about a week later, my attorney, she came to me. She said, he told us what happened, what really happened. And you, from my point of view and the court's point of view, they're looking at it as self-defense. I said, self-defense? I said, I didn't even stab him. I was wrestling with him to get off of me, but I never got a knife and stabbed him or poked him. I say he did that on his own. He fell on that knife. She said, well, we just go work it that way, whereas it was a self-defense. I said, but I didn't do anything but fight to keep my baby alive and myself alive. And I never had, I said the only time I had a knife was to grab the blade away from him. She said, well, we gonna have to present it as though it was self-defense, that you had to stab him in self-defense. And I'm like, just mesmerized and just, it was just beyond unbelief, because I never got the blade. I never stuck him. I was trying to pull the blade away from him, and they saw the scars in my hand and the cuts in my hand from grabbing. It was a long blade. And so next thing, with what he said, and then whatever, the charges were dropped. They were dismissed, they were dropped. And then I think you had to pay the, I don't know what they did, but all I know, they dismissed and they dropped the charges, and that was it. They say you shouldn't have any trouble with your jobs or getting jobs in the future, and this, that, and the other, because you didn't stab him. And the charges are dismissed and dropped. So I thought that was the end of that. But over the years, my mother has told my kids that I stabbed a man. Do you know, and the last time was just maybe a couple of years ago. And my son, his state of mind is such that you can't tell him things like that. You know, I don't know what her purpose was for even telling my son something about his father that had happened almost 30 years ago. I mean, what's the purpose? Everything was dropped. But she kept telling different people this, and she lived in a whole different state. She didn't know anything about anything that had happened there. She had none of the facts. So recently, my son told me, you know, Grandma told me this, that, and the other. I'm like, wait, will she ever stop? I'm going to tell you, narcissists never stop trying to mar you. They never, once they get focused on you, they will be an enemy until the day they die. They will. It will never, ever stop. And they're good at putting on masks and flipping the script to have people think certain things about you because they keep dropping things in people's ears. And especially the way I live far away from her, they can't verify certain things. Well, they could if they just look up a record or something. I don't know. I don't have a record, a police record. But if that's on there, they'll see that it was dismissed or dropped over 30 years ago. But she used that. That's the only thing she can use. But she will never, because my brother, I guess her side pocket, her side hip, she didn't go and tell everybody that he had sold drugs in a prison. And that was a fact. She ain't spread that rumor and how much money they spent to keep him out of a federal prison. You would never hear that. She never repeats that. That's something happened years ago. I don't go around telling it, but I'm telling it now because it's part of the story where you can actually see how narcissist is with the person that who their hate is focused on. And they move in a certain way. They're good at wearing masks in front of certain people. And they will manipulate a story, twist a story to make them the hero, whereas they're destroying another person's life or trying to destroy another person's life who's totally got a blank record. You know, but they will try to destroy you that way because of envy, insecurities, the fear of someone getting attention. Like, she loves my father's attention. He doesn't want, I never was able to get really close to my dad because of that. Because she wanted all of the attention, and she still does. But she won't let him think that, but I think he knows. I think he knows. And just like I had an uncle, my favorite uncle, her brother, you know, he took me into his house after a situation they had to with her when I pleaded not to marry this one guy who eventually killed another man and killed himself. Honey, I've been through so much. But anyway, this man was my favorite uncle who allowed me to stay in his home in another state, and I had my baby with me. She wanted so badly to take my child from me that she had to wait till I was in school. I had enrolled in college to finish up school. And while I was gone, she came and she took the baby, took my baby, my firstborn son, and took him into another state. A whole bunch of stuff has gone on having to do uh, with a narcissistic type of parent. I didn't know exactly what this was until many years ago. Like I said, I checked myself into therapy after I got out of that house. And I didn't know what narcissistic characteristics and all that stuff until I started going into therapy once again because of post traumatic stress disorder. But I'm telling you, it's been something else, and I'm telling my truth while I'm still alive. And the thing is, a narcissist will retaliate against you because the more truth you tell, the more they will come at you. So I called her last time when she told my son that. I said, I don't care if you are my mother. I don't care how old you are. But you spread one more lie on me, we will be in court and I will sue you for defamation of character and slander because you keep telling something that isn't true just to make yourself look better or to make me look however you're trying to make me look like. But I will take you to court and I will sue you if you continue to do it. And I mentioned then she'll go off crying to my brother or my dad or so, oh, she's doing this. And she's just being so awful to me. That's the mask they put on. When they have destroyed you, going to your boss, tried to make you, your boss look at you different just because they're insecure or jealousy or not getting the attention they think that you're getting. Main characteristics of a narcissist. But yeah, so as long as I keep moving, and I don't know how long that's going to be, I will be telling truth, whether it's my own personal family type truth or truth about the universe, truth about the world, truth about the lies that have been told to us for hundreds and hundreds of years about who we are. I'm going to continue to tell truth and have the facts to back it up.